Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora, staring at the view screen with wide eyes. After 3 months of traveling through deep space, they had finally found what Earth had been searching for: alien life. The ship that appeared before them was massive, at least 5 times the size of Aurora. Its hull gleamed with a strange silver metal that seemed to shift colors in the starlight. Jake's hands gripped the armrests of his captain's chair as he tried to calm his racing heart. "They're hailing us, sir," said Lieutenant Ben Carter from the communications station. His voice shook slightly. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. The screen flickered and changed. A tall creature appeared, standing at least 7 feet high. Its skin was covered in dark green scales, and its eyes were bright yellow with vertical slits for pupils. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect English, translated by some technology Jake couldn't begin to understand. "Greetings, humans. I am Ambassador Krell of the Vakrian Empire. We have been watching your species with great interest. Your achievement of faster-than-light travel has not gone unnoticed." Jake stood up and straightened his uniform. "I'm Commander Jake Morrison of Earth. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." Krell's mouth curved into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "How fortunate. The Vakrian Empire welcomes you. We represent 7 species who have lived together in harmony for over 10,000 years. We would be honored to invite humanity to join the Galactic Council." The news sent shockwaves across Earth. Within a week, Captain Lisa Hayes was selected to lead a diplomatic team to the Vakrian homeworld. She was a veteran of the Mars colonies, known for her calm thinking and strong will. As her ship prepared to leave Earth orbit, she looked back at the blue planet through the window. "We're making history," said her assistant, a young diplomat named Paul Green. "Let's hope it's the good kind," Lisa replied. The journey to the Vakrian homeworld took 2 weeks. When they arrived, Lisa and her team were treated like honored guests. The Vakrian capital city was beautiful, with towers that reached into the clouds and gardens filled with plants from 100 different worlds. The aliens showed them museums, introduced them to the other species in their empire, and asked endless questions about human culture. Lisa answered carefully, always aware that every word she spoke represented all of humanity. The Vakrians seemed especially interested in human history, particularly the wars and conflicts that had shaped their civilization. They asked about military tactics, about how humans solved problems, about what drove people to explore and expand. "Your species is remarkable," Krell told Lisa during a formal dinner. "So young, yet so ambitious. So small, yet so driven to reach beyond your grasp. We believe in pushing boundaries," Lisa said. "In finding out what's possible." "Indeed," Krell said, his yellow eyes studying her closely. "That is precisely what makes you so interesting." Back on the Aurora, Ben Carter was doing his job perhaps a bit too well. As chief science officer, he had been analyzing every piece of Vakrian technology and communication he could access. The aliens had been generous with information, but Ben was naturally curious. He set up programs to monitor and record all signals coming from Vakrian ships and stations. 3 weeks after Lisa's departure, Ben's programs caught something unusual. It was an encrypted transmission between 2 Vakrian military vessels. The encryption was strong, but Ben had always been good with codes. He worked on it for 2 days straight, barely sleeping, until finally the message appeared on his screen in translated text. His blood went cold as he read it. The message was from a Vakrian admiral to the High Command. It spoke of humanity as a threat, a species too dangerous to be allowed to grow. It mentioned an ancient enemy, a race the Vakrians had barely defeated thousands of years ago, a species that had been adaptable, creative, and aggressive in their expansion. The admiral wrote that humans showed all the same signs. The conclusion was clear and terrible. Humanity had to be eliminated before they became too powerful. Ben immediately contacted Jake. Within an hour, every human ship in space received the decoded message. Earth's government went into emergency session. But it was already too late. The attack came without warning. The human colony on Kepler 442b was home to 50,000 people. They were farmers, scientists, families building a new life on a distant world. The Vakrian fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel directly above the colony and opened fire immediately. The defense satellites lasted less than a minute. The colony's shields held for maybe 5. Then, the beams of energy began to rain down on the settlement. Buildings exploded. The atmospheric processors were destroyed, releasing toxic gases. People ran through the streets, trying to reach the emergency bunkers, but there was nowhere safe to hide. Jake received the distress call 40 minutes after the attack began. By the time Aurora arrived in the system, it was over. The colony was gone. Fires burned across the surface of the planet, visible even from orbit. 50,000 people, dead in less than an hour. "Sir, we're picking up Vakrian ships at the edge of the system," Ben reported. His face was pale. "How many?" Jake asked. 30, no, 40. "They keep coming, sir. At least 60 ships now." Jake knew Aurora couldn't fight that many. He gave the order he hated more than anything in his life. "Get us out of here. Jump to coordinates Delta 7. We need to warn Earth." As Aurora fled into faster-than-light travel, Jake watched the burning colony disappear from his screen. He made a silent promise to the dead. This wasn't over. On the Vakrian homeworld, Lisa Hayes was in her quarters when armed guards burst through the door. She reached for the communication device on her desk, but a Vakrian soldier grabbed her arm and yanked her away. "What's happening?" she demanded. "We're here as peaceful ambassadors." "Not anymore," the guard said coldly. "Your species has been declared a threat to galactic peace. You are now prisoners of the Vakrian Empire." Lisa and her entire team were dragged to holding cells deep beneath the capital. Through the narrow window of her cell, she could see Vakrian warships launching into space. Hundreds of them, forming up into battle fleets. She pressed her hand against the cold wall and closed her eyes. Paul Green was in the cell next to hers. She could hear him breathing heavily, trying not to panic. "Lisa," he called out. "What do we do?" The Vakrian fleet arrived at Earth 3 days after the attack on Kepler 442b. They came in massive numbers, over 300 warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Their formation was perfect, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of the defense station above Earth, watching the enemy fleet advance. She had 40 ships under her command. 40 against 300. The odds were impossible, but she had no choice. This was humanity's home. "All ships, battle formation," she ordered. Her voice was steady, betraying none of the fear she felt. "We hold them as long as we can. Every minute counts." The first battle was brutal and short. Human ships fought with everything they had. But Vakrian technology was far superior. Their shields absorbed damage that would have destroyed a human vessel. Their weapons cut through human armor like paper. Within 2 hours, half of Kate's fleet was gone. But the humans learned fast. They noticed that Vakrian ships moved in predictable patterns, following formation rules perfectly. So Kate stopped following rules. She ordered her ships to break formation, to attack from unexpected angles, to use asteroids and debris as cover. A human destroyer called the Defiance rammed a Vakrian cruiser at full speed, its captain's last act taking out one of the larger enemy ships. Another ship detonated its reactor next to a Vakrian formation, the explosion damaging 3 vessels. The Vakrians had never seen such tactics. Their commanders hesitated, confused by enemies who willingly sacrificed themselves. That hesitation bought Earth precious hours. In those hours, Dr. Chris Palmer initiated Operation Exodus. He had planned for this possibility, though he had prayed it would never come. Across Earth and the remaining colonies, emergency alarms blared. Millions of people rushed to designated evacuation points. The colony ships had been built in secret over the past decade, hidden in asteroid fields and on remote moons. Now they launched by the dozens, each carrying thousands of refugees. The plan was simple and desperate. Scatter in all directions across the galaxy. Hide, survive, wait for a chance to fight back. Amy Foster was an engineer at the Mars colony. She was 26 years old and had never expected to be a leader. But when the evacuation order came, She found herself in charge of a colony ship called New Hope, responsible for 3,000 civilians. "Where are we going?" asked an old man as they fled the solar system. Amy looked at the star charts on her screen. There were millions of stars out there, endless possibilities. "Away," she said. "As far away as we can get." New Hope and hundreds of other ships jumped to faster than light speed, each heading in a different direction. Some would find safe worlds. Others would run out of supplies and die in the darkness between stars. But they would not make it easy for the Vakrians to finish them. Jake Morrison refused to run. He gathered every ship and volunteer he could find, maybe 30 vessels in total. Some were military ships, others were converted freighters and mining craft. It wasn't a fleet, it was barely a force, but it was something. "We can't beat them in a straight fight," said Lieutenant Dan Cooper, a young tactical officer who had survived the first battle. "But we don't have to. We hit their supply lines, their transport ships, anything that's not a warship. We make them hurt." They called themselves the Reapers, and they became ghosts in the void. The Vakrians sent resources to occupied worlds, but those convoys started disappearing. Human ships would emerge from hiding in asteroid fields, strike fast, and vanish before the Vakrian warships could respond. Admiral Krell, now in charge of the human territories, dismissed them in his reports to the High Command. "Minor pirates," he wrote. "An inconvenience. Nothing more." On Earth, the bombardment began. Vakrian ships positioned themselves in orbit and fired their weapons at the major cities. New York, Beijing, London, Mumbai. Cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble in hours. Billions died in the first week, but not everyone died. In the ruins, survivors organized. Command Sergeant Matt Daniels was a career soldier who had been on leave in Denver when the attack came. He survived the initial bombardment by chance, trapped in a basement that somehow didn't collapse. When he emerged, he found a city destroyed and alien troops moving through the streets. Matt began gathering survivors. At first, it was just a handful of people, hiding in the wreckage, then dozens, then hundreds. They moved through the underground tunnels that crisscrossed beneath the city, avoiding Vakrian patrols. The aliens sent ground troops to occupy what remained of Earth's population centers. They expected quick compliance. Instead, they found resistance. Humans attacked from the shadows, using weapons salvaged from the ruins. They set traps, collapsed buildings on patrol groups, and disappeared into the maze of destruction. A Vakrian officer reported back to his commander. "These humans, they don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't retreat when outnumbered. They don't surrender when the battle is lost. They just keep fighting." "Then kill them all," the commander ordered. But that was easier said than done. Every Vakrian patrol that went into the ruins faced ambush. The humans knew their own cities, even in ruins. They could navigate the wreckage, move through collapsed buildings, and strike from unexpected positions. Matt Daniels led raid after raid, his group growing larger as more survivors joined. They learned to use Vakrian weapons, studied enemy patrol patterns, and developed tactics specifically designed to fight an enemy with superior technology. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, Lisa Hayes was planning her own form of resistance. She had been imprisoned for 2 months. Along with the rest of her diplomatic team, the Vakrian guards rotated regularly, and she studied each one carefully. Most were the same, cold and efficient. But there was one guard who was different. He was a Trellan, one of the conquered species within the Vakrian Empire. His people had been subjugated 300 years ago, forced to serve as soldiers and workers. His name was Ven, and Lisa noticed he would sometimes hesitate before locking her cell, his eyes showing something that might have been sympathy. One night, she spoke to him. "How long have your people been slaves?" Ven looked at her sharply. "I am not a slave. I serve the Empire. Do you? Or do you have no choice?" He said nothing, but she saw his 3-fingered hand tighten on his weapon. "My people are dying," Lisa said quietly. "We're being exterminated for the crime of existing. Does that seem just to you?" "The High Command knows what's best for the galaxy," Ven replied. but his voice lacked conviction. Does it? Or does it know what's best for the Vakrians? Over the following weeks, Lisa carefully built a relationship with Ven. She learned about the Trellans, about how they had once been free, about the rebellions that had been crushed over the centuries. She shared stories about Earth, about humanity's own struggles for freedom. 3 months after her imprisonment, Ven came to her cell in the middle of the night. His scales were a pale blue, which Lisa had learned meant he was afraid. "I can get you to the docking bay," he whispered. "There's a small transport ship. I've disabled the security codes." "Why are you doing this?" Lisa asked. "Because you're right. And because I'm tired of being afraid." The escape was desperate and dangerous. Lisa and her team, 6 people total, followed Ven through maintenance tunnels and service corridors. They moved in darkness, avoiding sensors and guard patrols. Twice they nearly ran into Vakrian soldiers, hiding in storage rooms until the danger passed. At the docking bay, Ven showed them to a small courier ship. "It's fast and has enough fuel to reach the outer colonies." "Go. Come with us," Lisa urged. Ven shook his head. "If I disappear, they'll know someone helped you. I'll tell them you overpowered me. It will buy you time. They'll kill you, maybe. But I'll die knowing I did one thing right." He looked at Lisa with his large, dark eyes. "Survive. Make them pay for what they've done to your people. And remember that not all of us support the Empire." 10 years had passed since the Vakrians attacked Earth. 10 years of hiding, fighting, and surviving. The galaxy had changed, and so had humanity. Amy Foster stood in the central chamber of Haven, the underground city her people had built. 3,000 refugees had arrived here on New Hope, landing on a barren planet far from any known space lanes. Now, over 15,000 people called this place home. Children who had been born here played in the corridors, knowing no other life than the caves and tunnels. But Haven was more than just a hiding place. It had become a center of innovation. "Show me the new power system," Amy said to the chief engineer, a brilliant woman named Carol Wright. Carol led her to a laboratory carved deep in the rock. On the table sat a device that glowed with a soft blue light. "We've combined human quantum theory with Vakrian power coupling technology we salvaged from their wrecked ships. It's 3 times more efficient than anything we had before." Amy smiled. Necessity had made them creative. Without access to Earth's factories and resources, they had to invent new ways to do everything. They couldn't build traditional ships, so they designed smaller, faster vessels that could be constructed in underground facilities. They couldn't match Vakrian shields, so they developed stealth technology that made their ships harder to detect. Every human colony scattered across the galaxy was doing the same thing. Isolated and desperate, they evolved. They took risks that no established civilization would take. They tried ideas that seemed impossible, and sometimes, those impossible ideas worked. Jake Morrison's Reapers had grown from 30 ships to over 200. They operated from hidden bases in asteroid fields and abandoned space stations. Jake was older now, his hair showing gray at the temples, but his eyes still burned with the same fire. Dan Cooper, now his second in command, showed him the tactical display. "We've identified a Vakrian supply convoy, heading to their base on Arcturus 7, 6 transport ships with only 2 escort cruisers. They're getting careless," Jake observed. "Can you blame them? They think they've won. Earth is occupied. The colonies are scattered. We're just a nuisance to them." Jake's smile was cold. "Let's remind them we're a dangerous nuisance. Prepare the ambush." The attack came 3 days later. The Reapers emerged from behind a gas giant, their ships modified to run silent until the last moment. They hit the convoy fast and hard, destroying the escort cruisers before the Vakrians could even raise shields. But Jake had learned something over the years. Destroyed ships were useful, but captured ships were valuable. His boarding teams swarmed onto the transport vessels, taking them mostly intact. Inside were weapons, supplies, and most importantly, computer cores filled with data. The Vakrians scrambled warships to respond, but by the time they arrived, the Reapers were gone. They had learned to strike and disappear like smoke. On occupied Earth, Matt Daniels crouched in the ruins of what had once been Chicago. Around him, 40 resistance fighters waited in the darkness. They had been tracking a Vakrian patrol for 3 days, learning its route and timing. The aliens came right on schedule, a squad of 12 soldiers moving through the rubble. They were confident, talking to each other over their communication systems. They had been on Earth for 10 years and had forgotten to be careful. Matt gave the signal. The resistance attacked from 6 directions at once. Humans emerged from hiding spots in the wreckage, weapons firing. The Vakrians tried to form a defensive position, but the humans were already among them, fighting at close range where the aliens' superior technology mattered less. The battle lasted less than 2 minutes. 12 Vakrian soldiers dead, 0 human casualties. Matt's team stripped the bodies of weapons and equipment, then disappeared back into the ruins before reinforcements could arrive. A young fighter named Kevin Shaw looked at the captured Vakrian rifles. "We're getting good at this." "We have to be," Matt replied. "It's the only way we survive." The resistance had learned hard lessons over the years. They learned that humans were better at persistence hunting than any alien species. They could track enemies for days without rest. They learned that human soldiers could endure psychological stress that broke alien minds. They learned that what aliens saw as reckless courage, humans called necessity. Most importantly, they learned to use the Vakrians' own logic against them. The aliens fought by the rules of war they had developed over thousands of years. Humans ignored those rules and did whatever worked. Lisa Hayes arrived at one of the outer colonies 6 months after her escape from the Vakrian homeworld. She had traveled carefully, moving from one hidden human settlement to another, always staying ahead of alien patrols. The colony was small, maybe 2,000 people living in domed habitats on an ice moon. But when Lisa transmitted her identity codes, the colony administrator practically ran to meet her ship. "Captain Hayes, we thought you were dead," the administrator said. "I've been busy," Lisa replied. "I need to speak to whoever is in charge of coordinating the resistance." Over the following months, Lisa traveled to dozens of colonies, carrying her stolen Vakrian data and a message of unity. The scattered humans needed to work together if they were going to survive. At one colony, she met a young scientist named Laura Bennett. The woman was thin and tired, but her eyes were bright with excitement as she explained her work. "I've been studying the difference between human and Vakrian brain structures," Laura said, showing Lisa complex diagrams. "Our neural pathways process information differently. We make intuitive leaps that their minds can't follow. We see patterns in chaos. We create randomness that their logical systems can't predict. How does that help us?" Lisa asked. "I've been developing computer systems based on human neural patterns. Quantum processors that use human-style thinking. The Vakrians can't interface with them properly. Their minds are too rigid." Lisa stared at the diagrams. "You're saying we can build technology they can't use or counter?" "Exactly. It's not just about matching their technology. It's about making technology that's uniquely human." Away. The idea spread through the colonies like wildfire. Soon, engineers and scientists across human space were working on Laura's theories. They developed new weapons, new ship systems, new communication networks, all based on the one advantage humans had: their minds worked differently than any known species in the galaxy. The Vakrians noticed the changes. Their intelligence reports showed increasing human activity. The raids were becoming more sophisticated. The resistance on Earth was growing stronger, not weaker. Colonies that should have died were thriving. Admiral Krell read the reports with growing frustration. He had told the High Command that exterminating humanity would be simple. The humans were primitive, weak, and divided. 10 years later, they were still fighting, still evolving, still refusing to die. He called a meeting of his top commanders. "We need to increase pressure on all fronts. Find their colonies and destroy them. Crush the resistance on Earth. Eliminate the pirates who attack our convoys." "With respect, Admiral," one commander said carefully. "We've been trying to do exactly that for 10 years. Every colony we find, 2 more appear. Every resistance cell we destroy. 3 more form. The humans are adapting faster than we can. They're animals. Krell hissed. Clever animals. But animals nonetheless. We will prevail. But in his private quarters, Krell looked at the casualty reports and wondered. The Vakrian Empire had fought many wars over the centuries. They had conquered dozens of species. It was never easy, but it was always inevitable. Superior technology and numbers always won. Except against humans, those advantages were mattering less every year. The humans found ways around superior technology. They turned smaller numbers into an advantage by being unpredictable. They made decisions that seemed insane but somehow worked. Krell pulled up old records, files from thousands of years ago. The last time the Vakrians had faced an enemy like this, it had nearly destroyed their civilization. They had won that war. But barely. It had taken everything they had. He looked at the current deployment of forces. Thousands of ships committed to hunting down a supposedly defeated enemy. Resources diverted from other parts of the Empire, other conquered species watching, wondering if the Vakrians were as invincible as they claimed. For the first time in 10 years, Admiral Krell felt something unfamiliar: doubt. Meanwhile, in the hidden shipyards beyond the Galactic Rim, Admiral Kate Sullivan watched as another warship came off the construction line. She had been building this fleet in secret for 8 years, using salvaged materials and desperate ingenuity. The ships were rough and improvised, nothing like the beautiful vessels Earth had built before the war, but they worked. More importantly, they incorporated everything humanity had learned from 10 years of fighting. "How many now?" she asked her chief of construction. 43 combat ready. Another 20 in various stages of completion. Kate nodded slowly. It wasn't enough to fight the entire Vakrian Empire, but it might be enough to make a statement. To show the galaxy that humanity was still alive and still dangerous. "Keep building," she ordered, "and send out the call. It's time to bring the scattered fleets together. We've been hiding and learning long enough." The Battle of Proxima Station began at dawn. Though dawn had no meaning in the darkness of space, the Vakrian base orbited a dead planet, a massive station that served as a staging point for their fleets. It was considered impregnable, defended by over 60 warships, and equipped with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Admiral Kate Sullivan's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 43 human ships against 60 Vakrian vessels, and a fortified station. The odds were terrible. But Kate had not come here to play it safe. "All ships, attack formation Beta," she ordered. "Remember, they expect us to be predictable. Let's disappoint them." The Vakrian commander at Proxima Station saw the human fleet on his sensors and laughed. 40 ships against his forces? It was suicide. He sent a message to the approaching fleet. "Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Kate's response was to open fire. The human ships split into 3 groups, each moving in a different direction. The Vakrians moved to intercept, their formations perfect and disciplined. But the humans didn't engage head-on. Instead, they weaved between the Vakrian ships, firing at close range, and then breaking away before the aliens could coordinate their response. A Vakrian cruiser exploded as 3 human ships concentrated fire on its weakest point. Another took heavy damage when a human destroyer rammed it at full speed, the captain's last order taking both ships out of the fight. "They're using kamikaze tactics," the Vakrian commander reported to his superiors. "It makes no sense. They're throwing away ships," but it made perfect sense to the humans. Every ship they sacrificed took out a larger, more valuable Vakrian vessel. It was brutal math. But it was working. Then Jake Morrison and the Reapers arrived. 200 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel behind the Vakrian formation. They had been waiting in the neighboring system, timing their arrival perfectly. The Vakrians suddenly found themselves surrounded, human ships attacking from all directions. Jake's ship, still called Aurora after all these years, led the charge. Dan Cooper coordinated the attack from the tactical station, directing ships with the precision of a surgeon. The Reapers had been fighting together for years. They knew each other's moves, trusted each other completely. A Vakrian battleship, 3 times the size of any human vessel, turned to engage Aurora. Its weapons powered up, ready to obliterate the smaller ship. But Jake didn't run. He flew straight at it. "Boarding teams, prepare for deployment," he ordered. The Vakrian captain couldn't believe what he was seeing. The human ship was going to ram them. He ordered evasive maneuvers. But it was too late. Aurora crashed through the battleship's shields at full speed, not to destroy it, but to attach to its hull. Cutting torches burned through the armor. Airlocks were breached. And then the human Marines poured into the Vakrian ship. Commander Alex Stone led the boarding team. He was a veteran of dozens of such actions, his body covered in scars from 10 years of war. Behind him came 20 Marines, each one a specialist in close combat. The Vakrians inside the ship scrambled to repel the boarders. They had weapons and armor. They had training. But they had never fought humans at close range before. Alex moved through the corridors like a force of nature. The Vakrians were taller and stronger. But humans were faster and more adaptable. When a Vakrian raised his weapon, Alex was already moving, rolling under the shot and coming up to strike at the aliens' weak points. His team spread through the ship, fighting room by room. The Vakrians tried to hold defensive positions, but the humans used tactics the aliens had never seen. They used grenades in ways that violated every rule of ship combat. They crawled through ventilation systems. They turned the ship's own systems against the crew. Within 30 minutes, Alex and his team reached the bridge. The Vakrian captain fought to the last, but it wasn't enough. Alex stood over the command console, breathing hard, blood on his armor, from a dozen small wounds. "Ship secured," he reported to Jake. "Computer core intact." The capture of the battleship turned the tide of the battle. Kate's forces rallied, pressing the attack with renewed energy. The Vakrians, shocked by the loss of their flagship, began to fall back in disorder. But the real surprise came from Haven. Amy Foster had spent 10 years developing her cyber warfare systems. Now, as the battle raged, she activated them from halfway across the galaxy. The virus she had created was unlike anything the Vakrians had encountered. It didn't just attack their computer systems. It introduced chaos and randomness, patterns that made no logical sense. Vakrian tactical computers started giving contradictory orders. Communication networks became flooded with false data. Ship systems began to malfunction in unpredictable ways. "What's happening?" the Vakrian commander screamed at his technical officers. "Why aren't the systems responding?" "Oh, I don't know, sir," the officer replied, panic in his voice. "The virus is doing things that shouldn't be possible. It's like it's thinking, adapting in real time." That was exactly what it was doing. Amy's virus was based on human neural patterns, the same research Laura Bennett had pioneered. It thought like a human, made intuitive leaps and creative decisions that Vakrian computer defenses couldn't predict or counter. Within an hour, the Vakrian fleet at Proxima Station was in full retreat. They left behind the captured battleship, 3 destroyed cruisers, and the station itself, which Kate's forces quickly occupied. The victory sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in 10 years, humanity had won a major battle. Not through guerrilla tactics or hit-and-run raids, but in direct combat. But Kate knew this was just the beginning. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the captured Vakrian data cores. "What do we have?" One of the flagship. Her intelligence officer, a sharp woman named Linda Cruz, scrolled through the information. Everything. Fleet positions, base locations, supply routes. The Vakrians have been treating their data security like they've already won. They never expected us to capture a ship intact. Kate smiled grimly. "Send this information to every human colony. Every resistance cell. Every ship. Let's show them what we can do when we work together." The data reached Matt Daniels on Earth 3 days later. He sat in a bunker deep beneath the ruins of Chicago, reading the reports on a salvaged tablet. Around him, resistance leaders from across the planet had gathered. "They're vulnerable," Matt said, pointing to the data. The Vakrian occupation force is spread thin. They've been pulling ships away to fight the Reapers and chase our colonies. Earth is defended by less than half the forces they had 5 years ago. What are you suggesting? Asked Karen Price, who led the resistance in what remained of Europe. We've been fighting a defensive war, hitting and running, just trying to survive. I say it's time to go on the offensive. We take back our planet. The other resistance leaders looked at each other. For 10 years, they had been living in ruins, hiding in shadows. The idea of actually fighting to win seemed almost impossible. But not to Matt. He had been fighting for too long to accept permanent defeat. We coordinate with the orbital attacks. Kate's fleet can hit the Vakrian ships in space. We rise up on the ground. All at once, every resistance cell across the planet. That's suicide, someone said. Maybe, Matt agreed. But it's also our only chance. The Vakrians think we're broken. They think Earth is theirs. Let's prove them wrong. Across the galaxy, Lisa Hayes was having similar conversations. She had spent the past year traveling between human colonies and making contact with other species in the Vakrian Empire. The Trellans, who had helped her escape, were not the only ones unhappy with Vakrian rule. On a remote planet in the Outer Territories, she met with representatives from 4 different conquered species. They gathered in secret, knowing that discovery would mean death. A Trellan elder named Sorn spoke first. The Vakrians are spreading themselves thin fighting your people. We've noticed reduced patrols, fewer enforcement ships. They're worried. They should be, Lisa said. Humanity is done hiding. We're going to fight back. And we're going to win. The question is, will you join us? A representative from the insectoid krill species clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. For 300 years, we've been slaves. Why should we believe humans will be different? Because we know what it's like to fight for freedom, Lisa replied. We know what it's like to be told we don't deserve to exist. We're not asking you to trust us. We're asking you to fight for yourselves. We'll fight alongside you. But this is your freedom to win. The meeting lasted for hours. By the end, Lisa had tentative agreements from all 4 species. When humanity launched its offensive, the Vakrian Empire would face rebellions on a dozen worlds. Laura Bennett's quantum communication network made it possible to coordinate everything. Her systems, based on human neural patterns, allowed instant communication across vast distances. The Vakrians couldn't intercept or decode the messages. They could barely detect them. Orders went out across human space. Amy Foster prepared her cyber warfare teams. Jake Morrison positioned the Reapers for maximum impact. Kate Sullivan gathered her fleet for the largest operation since the war began. Matt Daniels stockpiled weapons and prepared his resistance fighters. And on the Vakrian homeworld, Admiral Krell read the latest reports with growing alarm. Human activity was increasing everywhere. Attacks were becoming more coordinated. Something was happening, but he couldn't figure out what. Should we request reinforcements from the core fleets? His second-in-command asked. Krell hesitated. To admit he needed help would be to admit the humans were a real threat. It would mean acknowledging that his 10-year campaign to exterminate them had failed. No, he said finally. We can handle this. Increase patrols, tighten security, find their hidden bases, and destroy them. The attack began exactly at midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Across 100 worlds, humanity struck back. On Earth, Matt Daniels emerged from the ruins of Chicago with 10,000 resistance fighters behind him. Across the planet, in every occupied city, humans rose up from their hiding places. They had been preparing for this moment for months, stockpiling captured Vakrian weapons and coordinating through Laura Bennett's quantum network. The Vakrian occupation forces were caught completely by surprise. Soldiers who had grown comfortable in their barracks found themselves under attack from every direction. Bases that had stood unchallenged for 10 years were suddenly surrounded by angry humans. Matt led his forces straight toward the Vakrian command center in downtown Chicago. The aliens had fortified it heavily, but the humans had something the Vakrians lacked. They knew this city. Every street, every building, every tunnel beneath the ground. Team 1. Flank left through the old subway system, Matt ordered. Team 2. Hit them from the high rises to the east. Team 3. With me through the front. The Vakrian commander inside the base watched the human forces advancing and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. These weren't the desperate survivors he had been hunting for years. These were organized, equipped, and absolutely determined soldiers. Request immediate air support, he transmitted to the orbital fleet. But the orbital fleet had problems of its own. Admiral Kate Sullivan's armada had arrived at Earth with over 100 ships, every vessel humanity could gather. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately engaged the Vakrian defenders. The space battle above Earth was everything the humans had learned compressed into one desperate fight. Kate's ships moved in unpredictable patterns, ignoring formation doctrine entirely. They used the moon as cover, hiding behind orbital debris, and striking from unexpected angles. But the real surprise came when Amy Foster's cyber attack went live. Every Vakrian ship in Earth orbit suddenly found its systems going haywire. Weapons targeting became erratic. Shield generators fluctuated wildly. Communication channels filled with garbage data. What's happening? The Vakrian fleet commander demanded. His technical officer stared at the screen in horror. The virus is in everything. It's spreading through our entire network. I've never seen anything like it. The virus was Amy's masterpiece. 10 years of work creating digital chaos that Vakrian logical systems couldn't comprehend or fight. It didn't just disrupt their systems. It made them unpredictable, unreliable, dangerous to their own crews. A Vakrian cruiser's weapons fired at random, hitting another Vakrian ship. A destroyer's engines suddenly accelerated to maximum, sending it spinning out of control. Across the fleet, disaster compounded upon disaster. Kate pressed the advantage, her ships tearing into the confused Vakrian forces. Within 3 hours, the orbital battle was over. The surviving Vakrian ships fled into faster-than-light travel, abandoning Earth entirely. On the ground, Matt Daniels and his team breached the Vakrian command center. The fighting was brutal and close. Humans and aliens struggled in the corridors. But the resistance fighters had one advantage. They wanted this more. Earth was their home, and they were taking it back. When Matt finally reached the command center, the Vakrian commander stood with his weapon raised. "You've won this battle," the alien said. "But the Empire will send more ships, more soldiers. You cannot win this war." Matt thought about 10 years of hiding in ruins, 10 years of watching his planet burn, 10 years of losing friends and family to an enemy that wanted his species extinct. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "We've already won. You just don't know it yet." The Vakrian commander died fighting, but his words echoed in Matt's mind. Was this really victory? Or just a temporary setback for the Empire? The answer came from across the galaxy. Lisa Hayes had been coordinating with the conquered species, and when humanity struck, they struck too. The Trellans rose up on their homeworld, attacking Vakrian garrisons. The Krill seized their orbital stations. 4 other species launched simultaneous rebellions. The Vakrian Empire, which had stood unchallenged for 10,000 years, suddenly found itself fighting wars on 20 fronts. Their military, spread thin by years of chasing human survivors, couldn't be everywhere at once. Admiral Krell watched his empire crumbling and finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. 10 years ago, he had reported to the High Command that humans were a threat that needed to be eliminated quickly. He had been right about the threat. But his attempt to eliminate them had created something far worse. He had forged humanity in fire. He had given them a reason to unite. He had shown the other conquered species that the Vakrians could be beaten. He had, through his own actions, created the exact scenario the Empire feared most. "Recall all fleets to the core systems," he ordered. "Abandon the outer territories. We need to consolidate our forces." But Jake Morrison and the Reapers had other plans. They had positioned themselves along every major retreat route. And as Vakrian fleets pulled back, the humans hit them again and again. Ships that had survived the battles limped away, only to face ambush after ambush. The Reapers had grown to over 300 ships now, and they fought with the skill of veterans who had been at war for a decade. Dan Cooper's tactical planning was flawless, and Jake's crews executed every attack with precision. A Vakrian admiral, retreating from a lost battle, sent a message to the High Command. The humans are everywhere. They attack from nowhere. They use tactics we cannot predict. They sacrifice their ships without hesitation. How do we fight an enemy that doesn't fear death? The High Command had no answer. For 10,000 years, they had dominated the galaxy through superior technology and numbers. But humanity had shown that those advantages meant nothing against an enemy that refused to be beaten. Finally, after months of fighting, Kate Sullivan assembled the largest human fleet in history. Over 200 ships, every vessel that could fly and fight, they set course for the Vakrian homeworld itself. "Are you sure about this?" Dan Cooper asked Jake. They stood on Aurora's bridge, watching the fleet assemble. "No," Jake admitted. "But we're doing it anyway. That's kind of our thing." The human armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vakrian home system. Every ship's sensors immediately lit up with enemy contacts. The Vakrians had pulled back almost their entire military to defend their homeworld. Over 400 warships stood between the humans and their target. It was the largest battle of the war, maybe the largest battle in galactic history. The Vakrians fought desperately, knowing that if their homeworld fell, their empire was finished. The humans fought with 10 years of anger and determination behind every shot. Alex Stone led another boarding action. This time against a Vakrian dreadnought, twice the size of anything humanity had ever built. His Marines fought deck by deck, turning the massive ship's size against it. The Vakrians couldn't coordinate defense across such a huge vessel, and the humans used that against them. Amy Foster's virus tore through the Vakrian network, and Laura Bennett's quantum systems kept human communications secure and instant. Every advantage humanity had developed over 10 years of war was deployed in this one battle. The fighting lasted 3 days. Ships on both sides were destroyed by the dozens. Space around the Vakrian homeworld became a graveyard of wrecked vessels and debris. But slowly, inevitably, the humans pushed forward. On the third day, Jake Morrison led a strike team to the surface. Their mission was to disable the planetary shields, so Kate's fleet could force a surrender. With him were Matt Daniels, fresh from Earth, and volunteers from a dozen different colonies. They fought through Vakrian defenses in brutal ground combat. Dan Cooper coordinated orbital support, human ships providing covering fire for the ground team. The Vakrians threw everything they had at the humans, but nothing stopped them. When Jake finally reached the shield generator, he found it defended by Admiral Krell himself. The Vakrian commander stood with a weapon in his scaled hands, his yellow eyes burning with hatred. "You should have died 10 years ago," Krell hissed. "Your entire species should have been erased." "Yeah," Jake replied, raising his own weapon. "You probably should have made sure of that," cried. The fight was short and brutal. Krell was a trained warrior, but Jake had been fighting for his species' survival for 10 years. When it was over, Jake stood over the alien's body and activated the charges his team had placed. The shields fell. Above, Kate Sullivan's fleet moved into position. Every weapon in the human armada pointed at the Vakrian homeworld. Kate opened a communication channel to the planet's surface. "This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Terran Coalition. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will do to your world what you did to Earth." Below, in the Vakrian High Command bunker, the surviving leaders looked at each other. Their fleet was shattered. Their shields were down. The humans had proven they could destroy entire cities from orbit. They had seen the evidence themselves on Earth. But Lisa Hayes had one more card to play. She transmitted a message to every species in the Empire, not just the Vakrians. "This doesn't have to end in more death. We came here to stop the Empire, not to destroy every species in it. Surrender now. Face justice for your crimes, and we can build something better together." She thought about Ven, the Trellan guard who had helped her escape. He had told her that not everyone supported the Empire. She was betting that was still true. The response came not from the High Command, but from the Trellan resistance on the Vakrian homeworld. They seized the government buildings and arrested the High Command. Other conquered species followed their lead. rising up one final time. When the Vakrian High Command was dragged before human commanders, they expected execution. Instead, they found themselves facing trial. Lisa Hayes insisted on it. "We're not conquerors," she said. "We're survivors who fought back." There's a difference. The trials took months. The galaxy watched as humans proved they were interested in justice, not revenge. Some Vakrian leaders were executed for their crimes. Others were imprisoned. But the empire itself was dismantled, replaced by a coalition where every species had a voice. Jake Morrison stood on Earth a year after the final battle, watching the reconstruction. The planet was still scarred, cities still in ruins, but people were rebuilding. Humans had come home. Amy Foster's haven became a symbol, a reminder that even in the darkest times, humans could build something new. Her cyber warfare technology was shared with all the species in the new coalition, protection against future threats. Matt Daniels helped train a new defense force, making sure that Earth would never be caught unprepared again. The lessons of the war were written into every aspect of the new military. Laura Bennett's quantum research opened up entire new fields of science. Her work on human neural patterns led to breakthroughs that benefited every species in the galaxy. Lisa Hayes became the first human representative to the new Galactic Council. She walked into the chamber, where once Ambassador Krell had greeted humanity with false friendship. Now, she stood as an equal, representing a species that had proven itself through fire. Kate Sullivan retired from active duty but continued to advise the new fleet. Someone asked her once what the secret to humanity's victory had been. "The Vakrians made one mistake," she said. "They thought we were weak because we were young. They thought we were easy to defeat because we were small. They tried to eliminate us before we became dangerous. And they created exactly what they feared. They gave us a reason to unite. They taught us to fight. They showed us what we were capable of when pushed to the edge. They wanted us gone, so we became their ultimate reckoning." On the anniversary of the first attack, people across human space paused to remember. 50,000 dead at Kepler 442b, billions killed on Earth. Countless more lost in the fighting that followed, but they also remembered what came after. How scattered survivors became a united force. How desperation bred innovation. How humans, when told they couldn't survive, proved everyone wrong. The species the Vakrians had tried to exterminate now stood as the defenders of freedom in the galaxy. The war had changed humanity forever, hardened them, taught them lessons written in blood and loss. But it had also revealed something the Vakrians never understood. Humans weren't dangerous because they were cruel or aggressive. They were dangerous because they never gave up. Because they adapted. Because they protected each other and refused to accept defeat. The galaxy had learned what humanity was truly capable of, and it would never forget. But even as he gave the orders, Krell felt that unfamiliar sensation again: doubt. For 10 years, he had been fighting an enemy that should have been dead. Instead, they were stronger, more dangerous, more organized. He looked at the reports one more time. Somewhere in the numbers and data, there was a pattern he was missing. The humans were planning something big. He could feel it. What he couldn't know was that humanity had spent 10 years learning, adapting, and preparing. The Vakrians had tried to destroy them before they became dangerous. Instead, they had forged them into exactly what they feared. The storm was coming, and the Vakrians were about to learn what it truly meant to face angry humans who had nothing left to lose. "Are we ready for that?" the chief asked. Kate looked at the rough warships floating in the darkness. 10 years ago, she would have said no. 10 years ago, she had commanded gleaming vessels with the latest technology. Those ships were gone, destroyed, or captured. But these new ships, built from wreckage and hope, carried something more valuable than advanced technology. They carried the survivors of a race that refused to surrender. Crews who had been forged in fire and loss. Humans who had learned to fight impossible odds and win. "Ready?" Kate said softly. "The Vakrians have no idea what ready means. They wanted us gone. They tried to exterminate us. Instead, They created something they should truly fear. They created angry humans, with nothing left to lose. She touched the cold metal of the nearest ship. Send the message. Tell every colony, every resistance cell, every scattered ship. The running is over. It's time to fight back. They launched from the docking bay at maximum speed, alarms blaring behind them. Vakrian fighters scrambled to intercept. But the little courier ship was indeed fast. It jumped to faster than light speed, just as energy beams lanced through the space where it had been. Lisa set course for the last known coordinates of human activity. She carried with her stolen data files containing Vakrian military positions, fleet movements, and technical specifications, information that could make a difference if humanity could survive long enough to use it. Behind her, the Vakrian homeworld grew small and distant. Ahead was darkness and uncertainty. But Lisa Hayes was free, and she carried something the Vakrians had tried to destroy: hope. She thought about Earth, about all the people who had no idea what was coming. She thought about the trust they had placed in the Vakrians, the hope for a peaceful future among the stars. All of it had been a lie. A trap. We survive, Lisa said quietly, and we find a way to warn them. But in her heart, she feared the warning would come too late. The Vakrians had been planning this from the beginning. They had studied humanity, learned their weaknesses, and positioned their forces. Now they were moving in for the kill. In the cold darkness of her cell, Lisa Hayes made her own promise. If humanity somehow survived this, the Vakrians would learn what it truly meant to threaten the human race. They thought they knew what humans were capable of. They were wrong. The war had begun, and neither side yet understood just how terribly it would change the galaxy.